recklessness that would indicate would be stunning. But tonight, no one will answer those questions, even as the virus cuts through the White House, through both the working and living quarters and what's supposed to be the people's house, through senior level Washington, cuts through the Pentagon. How long has the president, who almost never wears a mask and took it off when he returned from Walter Reed last night, how long has he been walking around with this, possibly infecting others? Did he stand on the debate stage with Joe Biden shouting in his direction, mocking him for wearing a mask while infected with COVID? Did he know it at the time? Remember, he showed up late, he wasn't tested at the debate site. When was his last negative test? So now the First Lady's infected, and Senior Advisor Hope Hicks, Campaign Chair Bill Stepien, Debate Coach Chris Christie, Party Chair Ron McDaniel, 3 Republican senators, President of Notre Dame, and others. Many of whom attended this Rose Garden event right there that you're looking at for Judge Amy Coney Barrett 2 weekends ago. Contact tracing might establish who they caught the virus from, but contact tracing requires knowing when someone tested positive and when they did not. That is how reckless this White House continues to be. The president lied to his favorite TV talking head, Sean Hannity, said he was waiting on a test to find out his condition on Thursday night. According to the White House, he'd already been tested after returning from that fundraising trip to New Jersey Thursday afternoon. But even that timeline, I mean, that's suspect. Hope Hicks was ill on the plane ride back on Air Force One from Minnesota Wednesday night, after Trump's rally. Shouldn't the president have been tested Wednesday night? Or Thursday morning at the latest? Reckless if he wasn't. Reckless if he was, because he then exposed hundreds of people to COVID, wealthy donors in New Jersey. Have all those hundreds of donors been contacted to get tested? Don't they deserve to know if you, the president, knew you were positive when you spoke in front of them without a mask? Don't you, the president, don't you owe it to them to give some peace of mind for their families? Apparently the president doesn't think so.
HIPAA kind of precludes me from going into too much depth in things that you know, I'm not at liberty or doesn't wish to be discussed. At some future point, maybe, but today, sorry.
The key words there, doesn't wish to be discussed. The president doesn't wish those things to be discussed. That's what he's talking about when he's saying HIPAA. President
was. Okay. So this is what peak hysteria must look like. Cable news can't possibly get more overheated than that, you must be thinking. Oh, no. No, yes, it can. And CNN tried hard last night to top it. Now, unfortunately, they're at something of a disadvantage. Their anchors aren't quite as articulate as the guys from MSNBC. The anchor you just saw went to Harvard. The CNN anchor had to settle for Yale, and only because his dad was the governor. So he doesn't have quite as many words to choose from when he wants to express his total outrage. Instead, he works blue, and the naughty language lets you know just how mad he is.
There he is, hair blown majestically, reshooting the scene for his own ad. I hold rallies, and I tell you to ignore masks, and I rip mine off as I vanquish the virus because I am a leader. Fear not, COVID. What a bunch of bull.
Whoa, naughty! That word wasn't in the prompter or anything, it just came out totally unscripted. Once Chris Cuomo saw Donald Trump outdoors without a mask, he just lost it. He honestly couldn't believe a president would do something that obscene. Infected with COVID, yet breathing the very air that circulates in our common atmosphere, and in the process killing millions. Standing on the White House balcony, Trump was a human bioweapon, a WMD. It was immoral. And Chris Cuomo would know precisely how immoral it was because he has done it himself. This spring, Chris Cuomo got COVID. You may have noticed they did like 27 shows in a row about it. Cuomo told us he was quarantined in his basement, but let's be honest, there are only so many squats you can do in the mirror. It got boring after a while. So Chris Cuomo secretly left his house, took off his mask, oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, and wandered around the Hamptons. While wandering, he promptly ran into this man who wondered what the hell Chris Cuomo was doing and asked him so. And here's what happened next.
And I just said, don't you have the coronavirus? Shouldn't you be quarantined? And I think his next words were, what the hell do you know about this? What do you know about the rules? I said, you're not supposed to be out here. Nobody had gloves on. Nobody had masks on.
Okay, so it turns out Chris Cuomo doesn't think he should have to wear a mask outside. Now, this is the point in the show where we wax outraged. He works on a rival network. We just can't believe he did that. We hate Chris Cuomo because he didn't wear a mask. But we're not going to tell you that. We're going to tell you the truth. It's fine that Chris Cuomo didn't wear a mask outside. We're not judging him. Masks are great. They have their place. Surgeons wear masks in operating rooms. People wear masks in elevators and crowded stores, and good for them. It probably helps. We've been arguing that for 6 months. Before the Surgeon General himself recommended masks, we thought, why would masks be a bad idea? So we're not against masks. We never will be. But wearing a mask while you ride your bike, while you jog, when you're alone in your car, while you're walking in the woods, when you're standing on the beach, that's just insane.
Awful in that way as a human being.
What's more troubling to me, I mean, and all of that is true, and it's also, there's a connection between what happened in the White House and the country. I mean, they're the same story. Everything they've done in the country, they've done in the White House. Why would it be any different? But what's more troubling to me are your colleagues, like Senator Kennedy of Louisiana. Senator Kennedy, you know, he's not an idiot. He's a quite smart guy. He's impressive in his own right. He's not like some anomalous, crazy character, you know, like with the psychology of Donald Trump. He's a, you know, Republican senator. He's out there the next day saying, actually, it turns out the virus is not as deadly as we thought. Ron Johnson talking about how he's going to, you know, do whatever it takes to go vote for Amy Coney Barrett. Like, no matter what he does, they are with him. And that is the pathology that, to me, is it's both incomprehensible and also unforgivable.
You're right, because, you know, as a now well-known political pundit and writer said, everything Trump touches dies. You see a person, a physician with a reasonably good reputation coming in, ruined by being close to the president. And you see these members of the United States Senate on the Republican side who will absolutely and do quietly talk about how insane the president is and how they're just trying to manage this situation. And yet when it comes down to it, they stand absolutely with him all the way to the bitter end. And we are pretty close to the bitter end. The fact that the president has withdrawn from COVID relief negotiations in favor of installing a Supreme Court justice in order to take away health care 6 days after the election, like, I'm not expecting them to be liberal. I'm not expecting them even to be decent. But I am a little puzzled at why they are so insistent at going down with the ship. And some of these people, I know you're right, they're bright and they're pretty good politicians, other than the fact that they are clearly under his spell. So it's not just enough to beat Trump. We have to repudiate Trumpism.
The president tweeted out this announcement that he personally was killing the stimulus talks because he doesn't want crime-infested Democrat cities to get any money, as if they are not Americans. Of course, the rescue money on the table, which is for state municipal governments, would go to everyone, not just Democrats. The market's tanked. Everyone I know who follows this is desultory about this. There's unbelievable suffering in the country, and he's choosing to be Hoover at a time of crisis similar to the Great Depression and announcing it.
Yeah, I think we can abandon the supposition that he's secretly a political genius. He is absolutely ruining his electoral chances by pulling out of COVID relief talks. And because we're Democrats and we care and we're desperately trying to help the people that we represent, we were willing to give him a $2 or $3 trillion lifeline into the economy 3 weeks out, 2 weeks out from the election. And you can make an argument that that wasn't in our political interest, but because we represent the people, because we see the desperation, we were willing to do the right thing and compromise with this president with whom we disagree so vehemently. And yet he decided to pull out of these talks. And so my view at this point is the only way we're going to get COVID relief, the only way we're going to protect your health care, the only way we're going to get any kind of sane COVID response is when not just Trump, but Trumpism, especially as it's manifested in the United States Senate, is repudiated across the board on November 4th.
All right, Senator Brian Schatz, who is there in his home state of Hawaii, far, far, far from the White House, which is probably a good idea. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Beginning of the show, not that far away from Joe Biden, pointing at him, rhetorically speaking, and physically also, for 90 minutes straight. And we kind of see the beginnings of these negotiations with tomorrow's debate, the vice presidential debate, because I know Mike Pence has tested negative so far, I understand, but still, he is refusing to have plexiglass around him. Whether that is symbolic or not, medically sound or not, I think it's because he's trying to put a line in the sand to protect the president from having those options next week.
Yeah, the head of the coronavirus task force won't have a screen. Jim Acosta, Dana Bash, thank you. Perspective now from someone who served as White House Chief of Staff for President Clinton and chaired the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016. John Podesta joins us now. Mr. Podesta, we know the president wants to make himself, look what he would term strong, is very afraid to look weak. If you look at what's happening in the White House right now, as we said, senior advisor to the president, Stephen Miller, now tested positive, apparently no contact tracing, staffers scared, the president was bent on ignoring science and orchestrating political theater for the cameras. I mean, does any of that actually look strong?
Well, look, I think we've gone from the farce of the return to the White House, kind of Mussolini style up those steps, to the tragedy that is befalling both the White House staff. We have the Joint Chiefs, in quarantine. But I think most damaging for the American people are the tweets of the president himself, telling them not to be afraid of coronavirus, telling them it's no worse than the flu. When we have this new study from the University of Washington that said if people would just mask publicly for the next 3 months, we could save 100,000 lives. And the president is just completely flaunting that and putting, literally hundreds of thousands of Americans at risk.
Yeah, if 95, right now about, according to that Washington study, about half the country, a little less, I think 45% maybe, of the country is wearing masks. If they say if 95% of the country would actually just mask up, just wear masks, and, not go out, but just wear masks and socially distance, they, as you said, could save, 100,000 or so lives. As a former White House Chief of Staff, I mean, when you look at this White House, is there anyone in charge here?
Well, Donald Trump is kind of running the White House. As for the Chief of Staff, the job I held, Mark Meadows, I think his reaction, what has he been doing? He tried to suppress the new FDA guidelines that were meant to create a safety regime around the potential for a vaccine. Finally, the FDA kind of figured out a way around that by publishing them as part of their meeting guidance, and then the White House finally relented. He has not issued any guidance to his own staff. You have White House staff calling the press, saying what's going on, should I come in, should I stay home. There's no order to wear masks in the White House except from Robert O'Brien, the National Security Advisor, to his staff, which is almost as big as the White House staff. At least Robert O'Brien has at least given some instruction to his team. I think in the military they have a term for the way this matter's been handled. It's called dereliction of duty.
If he was a CEO of a company, an actual company, not the sort of Potemkin company that he actually had, he would be removed by the board of directors because he's been telling employees, he's been walking around without a mask, mocking employees, pressuring them not to wear masks. If you were running the Biden campaign right now, would you want Joe Biden, your candidate, to be on a stage with Donald Trump unless you had direct access to the latest of his health information and knowledge of if he lied about being tested during the last debate?
Look, I think it's going to be very hard to carry this out. Now, I know that Vice President Biden wanted to debate Donald Trump. I think the first debate proved why he wanted to debate Donald Trump. Trump clearly lost that debate. The polls crashed on him following the debate. His antics were just turned people off. He lost ground with senior citizens. Biden looked strong. He turned into the camera. His speech today in Gettysburg, calling us together, is the kind of stuff that I think you want to you want to project in a debate, and Trump's incapable of doing it. So I think he wants to debate, but I think at this stage you got to ask yourself, is it safe for him to go out there? And I would be doubtful about that. Maybe maybe you could have do one of those things like they do in the courtroom, put Trump in another room, and Biden could be there with the town hall, so that the president doesn't infect the rest of the studio, the rest of the audience who are going to be with him in that town hall debate.
Yeah. It was called a trial by ordeal. They didn't sit before a jury. No, the accused were forced to plunge their hands into boiling water or walk barefoot across glowing metal, hot plowshares, or they had molten lead poured on their chests. Why? To find out whether they did it or not. If they died after being tortured, they were guilty. If they survived the torture, they were innocent. For hundreds of years, this was the standard in Europe. Health equaled virtue. Illness equaled sin. All of a sudden, we're returning to that standard. He's sick, therefore he's bad. Where's this going? How long before we start lecturing cancer patients for their tumors? How long before we start blaming people with Alzheimer's for their dementia? That could be coming sooner than we think. At MSNBC, one anchor was enraged when someone suggested the left hasn't been consistent on masks. He wrote this, quote, "The most humane and reasonable way to deal with all these people, if we survive this, is some kind of truth and reconciliation commission." Huh? Sounds like a joke, but it wasn't. Thousands of people liked that post. A truth and reconciliation commission, if we survive COVID, for the deniers. They'll get what they deserve. It's an inquisition. That's what they're calling for. As with any inquisition, the goal isn't truth or justice, needless to say, it's power. Put on your mask in between bites as you sit alone at the dinner table and there won't be any problems. Otherwise, there will be. Well, if you watched the show recently, you saw that we interviewed a Chinese virologist called Dr. Li Mingyang. She just told us that China deliberately created the coronavirus in a lab. That's the claim she made. She just published a paper backing up that claim. Now her mother has been arrested in China. That doctor, Li Mingyang, joins us after the break for an update on what happened. We'll be right back.
Sebastian Gorka here with what my...
With Priceline, you can get up to 60% off amazing hotels. And when you get a big deal, you feel like a...
It's terrifying that you're asking me. I have no idea. And people that I talk to in the White House say the same thing. I asked a senior White House official over the weekend, can you even trust the people that you work with to tell you the truth about their own health, right? Can you trust that other senior White House officials are telling you the truth about how they have tested? Or that they're going to reveal it in time if they test positive, that you're going to learn about it quickly enough for you to take some kind of action that might save you. And this person said, I can't trust them.
That's really as damning as it gets. Olivia Nuzzi, who's been doing great reporting on all of this. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, coming up, Joe Biden leading in double digits in the polls. I'll ask Cornell Belcher to explain what that growing lead really means next.
Every day. On.
Yeah. I just wanted that to be really clear to our viewers. So what we're watching is the death of free inquiry of science itself. We're not endorsing your findings. They're in the public for people to assess. They're in English. Your papers are online. Anyone can read them. But rather than debate them, we're trying to squelch them, and our scientific community is standing back and watching it happen. You are a brave person, Doctor. I appreciate your coming on this show. And Godspeed to your family and to you. I hope you're safe. Thank you.
Thank you. I will publish the next scientific report very soon. Thank you.
Good, and we'll be watching. Well, an update to a story we did. In June, rioters from Black Lives Matter stormed onto Mark and Patricia McCloskey's property in St. Louis. The rioters broke their gate, and McCloskey say threatened their lives. There's a major development tonight in this story. Judge Janine joins us to explain what it is. That's next.
I thought that Brett was accidentally going to kill me. there were a couple of questions that were not clearly answered by her.
This confirmation process has become a national disgrace.
They wanted power so badly, it made me work extra hard to make sure that Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed.
The Confirmation Chronicles, available now, only on Fox Nation.
PCmatic is built to proactively stop modern cyber threats.
And then get 50% off installation.
Those nominations. So we have to look in the mirror and have to
order obnoxious and flat out refused to answer a question about COVID-19. But are you really surprised? His minders in the Democratic Party, they never want him to go off script, because when he does, well, disaster usually ensues. Now, over the course of the campaign, we've all witnessed Joe become increasingly overwhelmed, increasingly agitated and irritable when he is faced with unexpected questions. And we've got the videotape evidence. Let's go to the videotape, as Warner Wolf would say.
The radical left. Will you shut up, man? Specifically, have you taken a cognitive
No, I haven't taken a test. Why the hell would I take a test? Come on, man. That's like saying you, before you got in this program, you take a test where you're taking cocaine or not. What do you think, huh? Are you a junkie?
What do you say?
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black. And I went on the floor and got you votes. I got votes for that bill. I convinced people to vote for it. So let's get those things straight, too. You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said I set up my son to work in an oil company. Isn't that what you said? Get your words straight, Jack. And you want to check my shape on? Let's do push-ups together, good man. Let's run. Let's do whatever you want to do. Let's take
Come on, man, you a junkie? Want to have a push-up contest? You know, calls a woman a lying, dog-faced pony soldier, asking an African-American reporter, what are you, come on, man, are you a junkie? You got a cocaine test? Come on, man. Is this how a healthy, stable, intelligent person responds to questions? No. Has the media highlighted this? No. And in one puzzling moment, only yesterday, Joe had some really creepy, weird things to say about, well, the children attending his event. Take a look.
Good news is, for me, I'm here. The bad news for you is, I'm coming back. I'm coming back. And I want to see these beautiful young ladies. I want to see them dancing when they're 4 years older, too. So it's great to see you. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, COVID is at least preventing him from sniffing their hair, which has been a past practice. And when Biden isn't being creepy or getting agitated or calling people junkies or hiding in his basement or screaming, come on, man, or not remembering the Declaration, well, he's trying his best to execute an age-old Democratic strategy. We see it every 2 years. We see it every 4 years. Democrats, they divide Americans with a never-ending stream of identity politics. Republicans are racist, sexist, misogynist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic. They want dirty air, water. They want grandma and grandpa to eat dog food till Donald Trump or Donald Trump lookalike throws them over the cliff in their wheelchair. But recently, during one sloppy attempt to pander to minorities, well, Biden was the one who sounded, well, in the words of Michelle Obama from yesterday, racist. Take a look.
The American public, the blinders have been taken off. They've all of a sudden seen a hell of a lot clearer. They see, geez, the reason I was able to stay sequestered in my home is because some black woman was able to stack the grocery shelf. Or I got a young Hispanic is out there, these dreamers are out there, 60,000 of them acting as first responders and nurses and docs. Or all of a sudden people are realizing, my Lord, you know, these people have done so much, not just black, white, across the board.
Which brings us to an important set of unanswered questions. When will the mob and the media, when are you ever going to hold him accountable for his troubled history on the issue of race in America? For example, all my friends...
their children, that he would just tweet out that I'm just not going to talk to anybody about this until after you elect me. That is literally insane. It's politically insane because you got people who, you know, were hoping that something would get done. He's now owning the failure. He's like, I am going to cause a thing to fail. But it's also incredibly cruel because apparently what he's saying is if you don't reelect me, I'm not going to do anything in October, November, December, or January till somebody else is in here. So you're imposing 4 years of pain on the people. It's literally insane, and people are starting. There's no rational explanation what you're seeing out of this White House at this point. None at all.
Well, what about the Democrats won't make a deal?
Well, the Democrats have been moving forward. Mnuchin and Pelosi were getting closer to a deal. Now, the idea is if Pelosi doesn't do what she said, you're going to punish the country for 4 months. That's insane. The two sides have been far apart, but they were moving closer together. There's at least a spirit you get something done. Mnuchin, I think, was caught as off guard as everybody else. The other thing is, to pull the rug out from under all the Republicans, including Mnuchin himself, is just literally insane. Something is desperately wrong in that White House right now.
Ashish, what do you think of the idea of the president going back to rallies and, open events, which is almost undoubtedly how he got sick in the first place?
Yeah, it's hard to know where he got infected, but look, the CDC guidelines on this is really clear, Chris. 10 days after onset of symptoms, up to the first 10 days, he is contagious. He should be going nowhere. He should not be taking joyrides. He should not be doing the kinds of things he's been doing. That 10 days puts him at the end of this weekend. After that, I think he can get out, but he has not been careful and he has not followed guidelines, and he's got to start doing that to protect people around him and to protect himself. People can get reinfected. We're going to hope that doesn't happen. And obviously there are plenty of people around him who have not yet been infected. Fewer and fewer people around him not infected, but there's still people out there around him who are not infected.
Two more quick things. Ashish, do you think the messaging war is over? That's it? Too many people have heard from him saying masks don't matter. They become a political statement, and that's it? That we're going to have a hard time getting under 40,000 cases until this virus just goes through enough bodies?
No. So look, 800 Americans are dying every day. We can't give up on this messaging war. We have 3 or 4 tools: testing, isolation, distancing, mask wearing. I'm going to keep saying it till I'm blue in the face every single day. We got to keep saying it because it's going to save lives.
All right, and Van, let me ask you this. So the word out of the campaign is, no, we need this debate. Pence is going to show things about Kamala Harris that will really expose her as a weakness for Biden, and she is literally heartbeat away if they get in, and it has to happen. They need it in the campaign, and Pence is a radio host, former guy, great debater, and he will show that team at its best.
Bring your popcorn. Kamala Harris is no joke. I don't know who they're talking about. I don't know who they think are going to be able to run over, roll over. You're going to be dealing with a seasoned prosecutor. You're going to be dealing with one of the toughest people in American politics. She is no joke. Bring your popcorn, bring your sody pop, and watch Mike Pence get taken to the woodshed tomorrow night.
I have sat next to you for at least 2 debates where you have spit either chicken or pizza at me after Kamala Harris said things in debates that caught you off guard. We will be watching, but I got to tell you, I wish it weren't happening, to be honest. Dr. Ja, Van Jones, thank you both. Be healthy, be well, and thank you.
Positive as well. His name is Admiral Charles W. Ray, and #2 official in the U.S. Coast Guard. You will remember this past weekend, the White House held that Rose Garden event at which Amy Coney Barrett was announced as a Supreme Court nominee. The day after that event, right? That's the event where you can you can use a seating chart from the Amy Coney Barrett announcement in the Rose Garden last weekend to create a little advent calendar predicting all the next people in Republican politics who are about to test positive, because of all the people who've tested positive from that event already. And we don't know if that Amy Coney Barrett announcement in the Rose Garden last weekend was an occasion of mass infection. But again, the numbers of people who are infected, including Mike Lee, Senator Mike Lee here, seen hugging people and helpfully holding his mask in his hand. I mean, the number of people who went to that event who have since tested positive make it seem possible that that was an occasion of mass infection. Well, that was last Saturday at the White House. Last Sunday at the White House, the day after that outdoor event at the White House, which may have been a super spreader occasion, the day after that, the White House hosted another event, this one indoors, with 0 social distancing and no masks in evidence. And Admiral Ray, the #2 official in the Coast Guard, attended that indoor event at the White House the day after the Rose Garden thing for the Supreme Court nominee. Admiral Ray attended, as did a number of other senior Pentagon officials, as did the president himself. And so now, between that event the day after the Barrett nomination was announced in the White House. That event with no protections in place at all inside the White House, no social distancing, no masks. Between that event and another Pentagon meeting, which happened a couple of days earlier, at which Admiral Ray met with a number of other senior brass from the military, between those different occasions in Washington in which he was around other senior officers from the military, the list of senior U.S. military officers who are now under quarantine is mind-blowing. Under quarantine, as of right now, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General John Hyten, the Chief of Naval Operations, the Army Chief of Staff, the Air Force Chief of Staff, the Space Force Chief of Staff, the number 2 official, the Deputy Commandant of the U.S. Marine Corps, the head of the National Guard, the head of U.S. Cyber Command and the National Security Agency, General Paul Nakasone. They're all quarantining now. They've all been exposed. Now, speaking of the NSA, the National Security Agency, I've actually got some news for you on that front, and this is exclusive to us. I am just breaking this news now. You have not heard this anywhere else. I mentioned that General Paul Nakasone, who heads the NSA and heads U.S. Cyber Command, he is now one of our nation's top military leaders who are all under quarantine after being exposed to COVID-19. Paul Nakasone's predecessor as head of the NSA, his predecessor who ran the NSA under George W. Bush, 4-star Air Force General Michael Hayden. He ran the NSA under President George W. Bush. He also ran the CIA under George W. Bush as well. General Michael Hayden is now retired from the military, retired from his long and often controversial career as a very high-level military and national security official. Michael Hayden is not someone I would have expected this from, but I am going to show you now, here exclusively, something that Michael Hayden has just done for Republican voters against Trump. This has not aired anywhere else before. I am going to show it to you right now. Watch this.
I'm Mike Hayden. I was the former director of the CIA and the NSA. If there's another term for President Trump, I don't know what happens to America. Truth is really important, but especially in intelligence. President Trump doesn't care about facts. President Trump doesn't care about the truth. He doesn't listen to his experts. The FBI says white nationalism is a real problem, and the FBI wants to do something about it, but the president doesn't want to talk about that. He doesn't keep the country safe. It's unbelievable. I was 40 years in the military, okay? Alliances are wonderful. Alliances are win-win. And now I don't know what's happening to our alliances. I mean it. If Trump gives another term, I think many alliances will be gone and America will be alone. And that's a real problem. I absolutely disagree with some of Biden's policies. But that's not important. What's important is the United States, and I'm supporting Joe Biden. Biden is a good man. Donald Trump is not.
Michael Hayden, his speech inflected there by aphasia, by the effects of a stroke, recording that remarkable ad for Republican voters against Trump. Again, what he says at the end there is, I absolutely disagree with some of Biden's policies, but that's not important. What's important is the United States, and I'm supporting Joe Biden. Biden is a good man. Donald Trump is not. Michael Hayden, again, George W. Bush era Director of the National Security Administration and Director of the CIA. Even though Michael Hayden's successor as NSA chief, Paul Nakasone, is quarantining tonight along with other senior military leaders because of COVID exposure, Paul Nakasone, current NSA chief, today participated in a remarkable joint address to the country today. I guess that's kind of how you'd consider it. It was a video that was addressed to the public from the heads of 4 intelligence and law enforcement agencies that are responsible for protecting the presidential election. Chris Wray, head of the FBI, Paul Nakasone, head of the NSA, Bill Evanina, who's the head of the National Counterintelligence and Security Center, and Chris Krebs, who's the director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, better known as CISA, something I didn't know existed before CISA and the FBI started putting out joint public service announcements about foreign adversaries messing with the election again this year. But this video today from the heads of these 4 law enforcement and intelligence agencies is kind of an odd duck. I'm not sure I've seen anything like it before. It is targeted to us, the public, and it is both a warning that our 2020 elections are being targeted by bad actors. It's a threat, particularly from the head of the FBI, that bad actors will be caught and punished for messing with our elections. But it's also kind of a pep talk to us, the public, that we can do it. That despite these threats to our election and the serious nature of them, we, as Americans, will choose our own leaders. We can do this. We need to vote. We even ought to be volunteering to work as election workers ourselves. This is remarkable. Watch this.
We're not going to tolerate foreign interference in our elections or criminal activity that threatens the sanctity of your vote or undermines public confidence in the outcome of the election.
Foreign actors are spreading disinformation and attempting to sway voters by executing influence operations. They are using an array of cyber activities with the intent to gain access to our election infrastructure. They are also attempting to collect derogatory personal information from candidates, campaigns, and prominent Americans. Despite these nefarious efforts, our election system remains resilient. To be clear, it would be very difficult for adversaries to interfere with or manipulate voting results at scale. Securing our election requires a whole of society approach. Every American has a role to play, especially since the American voter is the primary target of these foreign influence and disinformation efforts. As Americans, we are all in this together. I encourage you to stay informed and vote. By doing so, you'll not only help protect our elections, but also send a clear message to our adversaries. We decide who our elected officials are.
The American voters will decide American elections. And you, as the American voter, are the last line of defense by being a prepared, participating, and patient voter. Prepared by having a voting plan, no matter how you're voting. Participate by volunteering to be an election worker if you can. And be patient. Because of the changes due to COVID, on November 3rd, we might not know the outcome of our election. And that's okay. But we're going to need your patience until official results are announced. So get out there and vote with confidence and be a part of protecting 2020.
Chris Krebs, speaking alongside Bill Evanina, speaking alongside Christopher Wray, speaking alongside Paul Nakasone, General Paul Nakasone, all the heads of law enforcement and intelligence agencies tasked with protecting the election from crime and interference this year. I don't know if the Trump White House knows that this is what their intelligence and law enforcement agencies are doing in this messaging to the public ahead of Election Day. But boy, does that kind of stuff from those officials contradict everything we are hearing from the president, especially
police, gutting the Second Amendment, higher taxes, more regulation, a weaker military, and hugs and hot cocoa for Iran. If I know Mike Pence, and I think I do, he is going to make Senator Harris defend those positions.
The only part I didn't understand, what was the first reference on China? I missed that one.
I said that the press, many members of the press, have treated the Vice President and Senator Harris like your mother treats the good China. That is very, very,
I got
very
it delicately.
careful.
Okay. So here's my question. Now, I would bring up
the issues that she brought up herself about Joe Biden and his relationship with segregationists and his praise of a former Klansman and his partnering with that Klansman to stop integration of schools. And I thought it was a pretty powerful line. I was that little girl when she said that. Did she not mean it? At one point, I think on a late night show, she said, oh, no, it was only a debate. Does that mean we're not supposed to take anything she says seriously tomorrow?
Well, I think Senator Harris and Vice President Pence will talk about race in America. But if you read the Senator Harris's and Mr. Biden's agenda, you will see that they both believe that America is a racist nation, that we were racist in our origins and that we're even more racist today. Now, I've heard Senator Harris in the debates say that, not in those exact words, and recently Vice President Biden seems to agree with her. Once again, I think Mike Pence, very respectfully but firmly, will ask them to explain that, because I don't believe most Americans are racist.
All right. Thank you both. Thank you, Senator, for being with us. We appreciate it as always. When we come back, Texas Senator Ted Cruz had a wild back and forth with NBA owner Mark Cuban over the league's hypocrisy. Senator Cruz will join us later. Explosive new declassifications further implicate Hillary Clinton. She set the whole thing up, the Russia hoax. Why? To distract from her email, you know, the subpoenaed emails that she erased, and the bleach pit, and the hammers. Wow, new developments straight ahead.
Bill O'Reilly here, and we have another
empathy and heart. He showed his bragging nature and how well he's doing and how great he's feeling after 20 years. He's never felt better. I wish I could say that to my husband. You know, even if Nick would have survived, the complications that COVID had on his body, he would have dealt with for the rest of his life. We would have dealt with for the rest of his life. And, you know, it's just sad to me that he had a chance yesterday to really, after, you know, being diagnosed with COVID and being in the hospital, he had a chance to be a human. And not political, not Republican, Democrat, a human being that has been a part of this pandemic, and he chose to go the other way, and it was very upsetting and really horrible, and sad.
You got a lot on your plate. You are not a politician.
No.
This is not an agenda driver for you. And I really appreciate you just coming out to speak to the pain, because you know a lot of people share your pain, and you want to speak for them and let this president know and the others in leadership, people are hurting and they need help. And what is said matters, not as much as what's done, but it matters. So I thank you for putting a fresh cut in your own wound so that other people can understand what's happening. And I'm very sorry to meet you under these conditions, but you know what? You're putting some purpose to your pain, and there's a blessing in that. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris,
for giving me and the audience a chance to understand what is real. Forget about left and right, just real. Amanda Klutz, the best to you, and Elvis, we're a call away.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, God bless.
Good night.
We'll be right back.
It's an important time to save. With Priceline, you can get up to 6
workforce in human history.
Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez joins us live next. Plus, we'll hear tonight from the chairman of the medical division at UCSF. We got lots to get to tonight. Stay with us.
And he has the Cooney-Bullock administration came out in favor of banning semi-automatic guns. They also stood by when local communities adopted local ordinances that violate our Second Amendment. I will not allow that to happen on my watch. They also stood by when local municipalities started discussing things like sanctuary cities, which was very concerning. I would not stand by So this is a clear point of distinction, and I'm not sure how much more I could say. I support the Second Amendment. I would sign a constitutional carry bill if it came to my desk, and that's pretty clear. I do want to make a point that was made earlier. In Washington, I've found many ways to work across the aisle. I work with NSU on healthcare for...
You bought a product, your company bought a product. It didn't create a product, correct?
Correct. We bought a product that was in short supply, a product for which there were tens of thousands of patients on a wait list seeking therapy. And then,
my point, I get it. Fair and square, you bought the product. You didn't invent it, correct?
That's correct.
And then you marketed it, and you produced it, and you raised the price of it, correct?
Yes, but I was trying to explain one of the important things that we did was invest in process improvements that enabled us to move literally tens of thousands of patients off the waiting list.
Well,
to be able
I'm going to the price.
Today, Senator Ted Cruz had a brutal Twitter back and forth with Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban over the NBA's apparent hypocrisy on human rights, the league's soft stance on China, the embrace of left-wing politics. It started when Senator Cruz tweeted out an article from, my website, Hannity.com, showing the league's lackluster ratings for the NBA Finals and adding hashtag Go woke, go broke. Now that prompted a response from Cuban, quote, a U.S. senator with 3 NBA teams in his state employing thousands of people, and he's rooting for their businesses to do poorly. Also developing tonight, the streaming giant Netflix has been indicted in Texas for a, quote, lewd depiction of children in the highly controversial film called Cuties, a series I guess they put out. Joining us now with reaction, author of, and it's just out this week, it's on Amazon.com, bookstores everywhere. It's a must-read, One Vote Away, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. I've had a few battles with Cuban. I actually like the guy. I want his team to do well. I want the NBA to do well. I think the more, if I had my way, I think players that are admired by so many, if they would actually join with members of the community and invite people in to do positive things, keep schools safer, make sure kids get an education, I'd jump on board. I think most fans would. But I think when you're making political statements without backing it up with actions, I don't think it's as helpful.
Look, I totally agree. I mean, I love watching the NBA. I'm a diehard Houston Rockets fan. I've been since I was a little kid. And I think it's painful watching what the NBA, what they're doing right now, because they've essentially decided that half their fans are idiots and racists, and they're just going to insult them and they're going to lecture them. And when you watch an NBA game now, it's just the announcers are engaged in political tirades the whole time. And as the article on Hannity.com said, the first 3 games of the NBA Finals are the 3 lowest watched NBA Finals games in history, and half the fans are saying, all right, if you're going to insult me, to heck with you, I'm going to go do something else. You know, if the NBA wanted to do something really positive to make a difference in the African-American community, rather than supporting a Marxist organization like Black Lives Matter that's trying to abolish police departments, which endangers black communities, it'd be great to see NBA coaches and players raising money for school choice, for scholarships, for low-income African-American kids, Hispanic kids. That could make a real difference, but that doesn't fit with their social justice agenda, sadly.
Let's talk about 28 days from tonight, 4 weeks from tonight, and that is election night. And how do you see this race? A lot of important Senate races. You got Joni Ernst up for re-election, Cory Gardner, Martha McSally. You got Purdue in Georgia. We're following, very closely North Carolina and Tillis. You got Mitch McConnell up. I'm sure I'm missing 1 or 2, but Alabama's an important race. How do you see everything, and how do you see the presidential race? Because I don't see Joe Biden ever having to answer a single tough question the whole time.
Well, the press is fully all in support of Biden. I'm worried about the election. I think it's really volatile. I think it could go either way. I think we could have a fantastic election. The president could win by a big margin, and we could win both houses of Congress. But I also think it could be devastating. And I think we either win the presidency and win the Senate, or we lose the presidency and lose the Senate. And I very much hope it's the former and not the latter. And it depends on turnout. It depends on who shows up. It's one of the reasons I think the confirmation battle over Judge Barrett is so important. We're going to confirm Judge Barrett. We're going to do it by the end of the month. The Democrats are losing their mind. And I think that's going to be really important. It's also, as you know, one of the reasons why I wrote the new book, One Vote Away, to really highlight how the Supreme Court is on the ballot, how free speech is on the ballot, how religious liberty is on the ballot, how the Second Amendment is on the ballot, how school choice is on the ballot, that all of those were one vote away from a left-wing justice taking away our fundamental rights. And I think the confirmation battles will really underscore that.
What do you think the impact of this decision will be?
Well, you know, I think New York's 14th congressional district is really a microcosm for the entire country. And we're also a bellwether. Whenever the country is about to go through something incredibly traumatic and severe, it often hits my district first. We saw this with COVID and the pandemic. Our district was hit heaviest and hardest first before the waves started echoing across the nation in terms of COVID cases spiking. And we're already starting to see warning signs of the severe economic and health fallout that is to come. We are on the brink of an eviction crisis, a mass eviction crisis here in our district, but also across the country. 30 to 40 million people are at risk of being evicted because the president has decided to walk away from every working person in this country. Now, that's before we even get to mortgages. It's before we get to unemployment extension. It's before we get to a second stimulus check. In addition, just as we're entering the fall, we are at risk of a second spike. And what we are seeing here in New York City, which is a city that has some of the strictest COVID guidelines and some of the highest rates of mask wearing adherence in the country, we are still starting to experience areas where there's kind of a second spike. 9 zip codes in New York City are at risk of being shut down totally or partially due to a secondary fall wave. Now, if we decide, and if the president and the GOP follow through with walking away from COVID relief, we are looking at we are staring down the barrel at one of the largest mass eviction crises in the history of this country since the Great Depression. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at a potential second wave that could be catastrophic. We are looking at the potential of hunger in the United States exploding on a level that we have never seen since the Great Depression. And all of it is preventable. All of it. All we need to do is authorize a second stimulus check. We need to make sure that we get state and local funding so that municipal governments can stay above water at least through the end of the year. We need to make sure that we are funding large-scale testing and tracing programs, and we need to make sure that we're really developing a vaccine responsibly and not pushing one out for the sake of an election.
One of the things that I think is so baffling about this decision, I mean, even if you ignore the real world impact that you were just talking about there at length and in detail and with some eloquence, even if you ignore the real world impact, politically, this is something that is inexplicable. We are 4 weeks from the election. The American people are in a tough situation, coast to coast. Some of the states that are having the biggest spikes right now are deep red states that are very supportive of the president, and they are in pain right now, both in terms of COVID and the economic impact of it. It's strange to me, and I don't understand it. It makes me watch for a potential reversal here or some sort of move behind the curtain that we're not expecting. I wanted to ask you, though, how you think this interacts with the president being diagnosed and with what appears to be a large White House cluster and all of these people in Republican politics and the upper echelons of the White House testing positive. That just seems like one other element of this that makes this decision almost unbelievable, let alone a surprise.
It is unbelievable. And on one hand, I think that they're just kind of drinking their own Kool-Aid. They really started to believe that masks didn't matter, that rapid tests, which we had known were less effective, were acceptable before a mass super spreading event. They didn't even they didn't even put those seats 6 feet apart outside. And so there's a certain just basic denial of science and a lack of acceptance of science that we're looking at. But, you know, additionally, the president is not in a good condition. He just was diagnosed with COVID. His oxygen levels were in perilously low areas over the weekend that were extremely concerning. And then we're supposed to believe that everything is absolutely fine right now when we were receiving conflicting medical reports from both the White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and some of the physicians that we were hearing at Walter Reed. Now, I don't think that we should be making any large political decisions when the president is in such a perilous medical state. He is still receiving interventions and treatments, and we're in the middle of talking about and making dramatic decisions about what is happening with the COVID stimulus. Not only that, but he's also directly conflicting himself today. He retweeted the federal chairman, Jerome Powell, which is saying that Congress cannot do enough when it comes to critical economic indicators like inflation. When we're looking at joblessness, the Fed is basically telling us that there is no program too big that we could authorize. We cannot effectively spend enough right now. And the president retweeted that while also saying that he's going to walk away from relief. He is absolutely, and the entire White House staff, and by the way, every single Republican senator that is enabling him. This is also about Lindsey Graham. This is about Mitch McConnell. This is about Susan Collins. And yes, this is about making sure that we elect that our Republican senators who are enabling this are allowing our economy to risk free fall. Because if we had a veto-proof majority in the Senate, we could get this done without him. But the Senate Republicans don't want to pass a COVID stimulus bill either. And that's why we are in the position that we are in today.
Power corruption scandal in American history. Now the Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, today declassified handwritten notes from former CIA Director John Brennan, taken after he briefed then President Barack Obama in July of 2016 about Hillary Clinton's alleged plan to drum up the entire Trump-Russia hoax. And according to the notes, Brennan briefed Obama on allegations that Hillary, well, she was trying to tie Donald Trump to the collusion hoax. Why? To distract we, the American people, from her illicit private email server scandal. And we got some other big news last night. Paul Sperry tweeting, when all these documents are finally declassified and all the redactions removed from the reports, which the president is now promising to do, the nation will see that the FBI and the CIA not only knew the Russia collusion allegations against Donald Trump were a political dirty trick, but that they were all in on it. And President Trump responded to Paul Sperry's tweet with a, I have fully authorized the total declassification of any and all documents pertaining to the single greatest political crime in American history, that is the Russia hoax. Likewise, the Hillary Clinton email scandal, no redactions. And of course, this now all begs the question, what did Biden know? When did he know it? What did Barack know? And when did he know it? Here with reaction, the co-authors of Trump, America First, Dave Bossie, Corey Lewandowski, as well as Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. So now we have full confirmation. Greg, this is the story you had 2 #1 bestsellers on, that in fact Hillary concocted the whole thing for the purpose of distracting from the deleted emails and the bleach bit and the hammers and the classified information on the server that never should have been there.
Well, I knew she invented it all because I said so in Chapter 2 of my book, Clinton Collusion. And now we know that Hillary Clinton not only invented the Russia hoax, she financed the Russia hoax, she disseminated the Russia hoax, and Barack Obama knew it. He sat on the information, he covered it up to protect Clinton and destroy Donald Trump.
He sat there silently as our government was thrown into turmoil for the last 4 years over what he knew, based on the intelligence presented to him by John Brennan, was phony information conjured up by Hillary Clinton to distract from her own emails. But it demonstrates just how immoral, unscrupulous, devious, and corrupt Hillary Clinton was. And for those like John Brennan, who's now gone on the air and said, well, she didn't do anything wrong, she didn't do anything illegal, he doesn't know. He's not a lawyer. I would argue she has committed crimes depending upon how she disseminated the information. It's a crime, a felony.
Didn't he disseminate that information?
False information to a law enforcement.
Didn't he give it to Harry Reid?
He did, and so he would be culpable.
And didn't he leak it to David? Who leaked it to Korn and Isikoff, the conspiracy theorists? Because part of the dossier was leaked there, so we know. Go ahead.
Well, it depends on how it was leaked and to whom, and I hope that the president's declassification and removal of the redactions sheds light on that, because this does appear to be a criminal conspiracy.
All right, Corey, Dave Bossie, let me ask you both. Corey, you can answer first. How does this impact the election, and why are we only finding out 28 days before the next election, considering this is such a bombshell, and how do you see this shaping up? Because for the life of me, I can't tell anybody with any amount of certainty who's going to win in 28 days. Corey.
Sean, when does Comey and Clapper and Brennan, the guys who perpetuated the greatest crime in American history, get held accountable? When do they go to jail? When do they get walked out in handcuffs, Sean? Because there's been two tiers of justice in this country. One if you're a Donald Trump supporter and you get the book thrown at you, and one if you're a Hillary Clinton supporter and you get away with it. We've seen this time and time again, and we asked Donald Trump. Dave and I sat in the Oval Office and asked Donald Trump if Barack Obama knew about this insurance plan, and in 2018 he said Barack Obama did know. We know Joe Biden knew about it. He was briefed on it. We know Brennan knew about it. Clapper, Comey, none of them have been held account for what has transpired, which is the greatest hoax in American political history. They tried to take out a duly elected president, Sean, and no one, not one person, has been put in jail for this yet.
All right, Dave Bossie, how do you assess this race 28 days out?
Well, President Trump's going to win, but and we are going to be able to talk about this because we've all been waiting for John Durham. We've been waiting for this investigation to come to become public, and we're not getting anything. And now we're learning. We're learning just today. Thank God John Radcliffe has done this. But look, July 26th, Hillary Clinton approves this devious plan, this illegal plan. On the 28th, they have this briefing in the Oval Office, and on the 31st of July, Crossfire Hurricane begins. I mean, this. You don't need to be Columbo to figure this one out. What are we doing? Why is to Corey's point, why is no one being held to account? Why is no one going to jail? Why has nobody been indicted? This is a criminal conspiracy beyond all others. It's the greatest crime in American history. The Obama-Biden administration is the most corrupt in history. And what did Joe Biden know, and when did he know it? We know he was in the Oval Office for the January 5th, 2017 meeting where he recommended Mike Flynn get hit with the Logan Act. So we know he's in on this. So he needs to be asked, and we need to demand the answers of, did he know about this criminal conspiracy?
It does. 4 weeks away from the election is now showing very clearly.
At some point, if we don't get the pandemic under control, if there isn't a more aggressive move by the federal government on testing, at what point does it become a threat to national security that we are just being too vulnerable for too long?
Well, I think we've been vulnerable for too long already. I think if we had acted early and dispositively, this would look a lot different than it does now. I personally think the real answer here is the vaccine, and I do think in that sense the federal government has tried to move quickly and safely at the same time. I think when we get the vaccine, this changes very, very dramatically. The White House itself, the experience there shows testing is not enough. They were testing all the time. It didn't stop the virus.
Maybe they were testing. You know, we keep asking for the president's negative test results from last week. No word of where they are. It'd be pretty easy to produce if they had them. Ambassador John Bolton, thank you very much for the reality of what keeps us safe and what doesn't. Author of The Room Where It Happened. All right, we'll be right back.
Tonight, I'll be eating chicken tikka garlic naan. Cheers.
I win again. Patrick.
That's Sir Patrick.
Ooh, sir.
One day, we'll look back and remember the moment.
President Pence be quarantining away from all other people, even if he continues to test negative over these next few days?
Well, we know that the average person is infectious a day or two before they have symptoms, and so that timeline would make you worry that Vice President Pence was exposed, and therefore he should be staying away from other people until he has a number of negative tests to be 100% on the safe side.
Dr. Wachter, there's been what I sort of previously considered to be some loose talk about whether we should worry about the president's ability to carry out the duties of the presidency, given the COVID treatments he's taking. Whether or not specifically the steroid that he's taking is something that might have cognitive or mood-altering effects on the president that should worry us in terms of the kinds of decisions he's making. I've considered that to be sort of people over-worrying, but now we've got news from the New York Times that there are White House officials who are worried about that. The Speaker of the House gave voice to that worry tonight. Are we overthinking this, or is that something that is potentially a real concern?
I don't think we're overthinking it. It's hard to say for sure without him being examined by physicians, and I would love it to be independent physicians. But what we do know is that not only does that medicine, dexamethasone, frequently cause mood swings, even manicness, euphoria, but COVID can also alter your thinking, and particularly in elderly people. When an older person comes into the hospital and they're not thinking clearly, they're confused, the first thing we think about is an infection. So for a 74-year-old man to have COVID, symptomatic COVID, low blood oxygen, which can also alter your thinking, and be on dexamethasone, it certainly raises the possibility that his thinking is altered, his judgment is altered from the medications. And part of the problem is if he is the one responsible for figuring out whether he's capable of thinking clearly, that's not a good plan. I would say, of the hundreds and hundreds of patients I've taken care of who have altered thinking, it's not at all infrequent that they have no idea. It's one of the things that happens. They lose insight. They are unable to tell that they have a problem. It's the folks around them that can tell that. So I can't say for sure that there's a problem here, but it certainly is possible given the medications, the low blood oxygen, and the infection itself.
Dr. Wachter, you're saying some stuff that is rattling me a little bit. I'm going to break the rules here a little bit and ask you if you wouldn't mind sticking with us to the other side of this commercial break and coming back so I can ask you some clarifying questions because you've unnerved me a little. Would you mind staying with us?
Happy to. Thanks so much.
Dr. Robert Wachter is chairman of the Department of Medicine at UCSF. He'll be right back with us after this.
One of the worst things about a...
Excitement! Slotomania makes all the Intech team.
Midco Freestyle Wi-Fi opens a whole new world of possibilities. It's the freedom to dream, explore, and connect in every room of the...
Fair question. Look, can't ignore the president pushing us deeper into a pandemic as he walks infected through a White House case cluster. But Biden is making a pandemic push of his own. And it is worth your getting a sense of the very different message he is putting out from Captain Contagious in Chief.
Joe Biden near the site of one of the Civil War's bloodiest battles, pressing his case for unity for today's divided nation.
We must seek not to have our fists clenched, but our arms open. We have to seek not to tear each other apart, but seek to come together.
Biden traveling to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, invoking the words of President Abraham Lincoln.
Today, once again, we are a house divided. But that, my friends, can no longer be.
The former vice president with a push for bipartisanship and overcoming racial divisions, and issuing a call to action.
We must vote. We will vote. no matter how many obstacles are thrown in our way, because once America votes, America will be heard.
With the coronavirus crisis still raging across the country, Biden saying leaders should follow the science.
Wearing a mask is not a political statement. It's a scientific recommendation. We can't undo what has been done. We can't go back. We can do so much better.
Biden's trip took him to the critical battleground state of Pennsylvania, while President Trump is sidelined from the campaign trail with coronavirus. With just 4 weeks until Election Day, a new CNN poll shows Biden with his widest lead yet over the president nationwide. The Democratic nominee ahead of Trump with likely voters by 16 points. Biden's advantage fueled by support from older voters, a group Trump won by 7 points in 2016, but now backing Biden by 21 points. And the former vice president seeing an even bigger advantage among women, with 2/3 of female voters favoring Biden over Trump. Today, one of the Democratic Party's most revered women taking aim at the current president.
They're stoking fears about black and brown Americans, lying about how minorities will destroy the suburbs. So what the president is doing is once again patently false. It's morally wrong. And yes, it is racist.
In a 24-minute video, Michelle Obama making her closing argument for the election with her own pitch for unity.
Let's be very real. America is divided right now. And a lot of people are being sold lies from those who want to get rich or stay in power, or sometimes both. And as I've said before, we must all empathize with those who might not look like us or vote like us.
The former First Lady urging undecided voters to vote their conscience.
We can no longer pretend that we don't know exactly who and what this president stands for. Search your hearts and your conscience, and then vote for Joe Biden like your lives depend on it.
Joe Biden didn't mention President Trump by name once in that speech in Gettysburg, but shortly after, he was quick to criticize the president for canceling those stimulus negotiations. Biden argued the president turned his back on the very Americans who need that relief. Biden adding, worse yet, he never even really tried to get a deal for these Americans. Chris?
Or let's... Second Amendment rights, that's an unforgivable crime to the left, because you're supposed to have, just mindless obedience, and you're not supposed to challenge them.
And didn't they tell you which rooms in your house they were going to take over?
Pointing up at the windows, that's where I'm going to be sleeping, that's where I'm going to be taking my shower, that's where I'm going to be having my breakfast after we kill you and take your house.
I think I'd call that a threat. I think you have a good case, but it's sad you have to go through that challenging times.
Obviously, some of this depends on knowing their baseline personality, whether someone is manic, or is that the way they are normally, or is this unusual for them? Are they acting erratically? But there is neuropsychological testing. There are formal ways to test not just memory, but judgment. And whether he requires something quite that formal or something a little less formal, the key point is it certainly is possible. It would not be shocking, given his condition and the medications, that there are alterations in his thinking and his judgment, and he should be assessed for that by someone who is other than him.
Just to be clear, you believe, as somebody who with experience treating COVID patients and administering the kind of treatments that COVID patients with serious illness have had, that there should be that kind of an assessment done of the president now medically?
Now, it's possible that his physicians are doing that. In fact, he's being seen by physicians every day, and I assume one of the things they're doing, which would be routine in a patient with COVID and who's on steroids, is to assess his thinking, his judgment. So I can't say that that's not being done. I just hope it is being done, and it's going to be important that they render their judgment independently. I mean, one of the concerns, of course, is that this is not only their patient, but their boss. And clearly, when we heard the press conference the other day where the physician was saying, I'm basically playing to my boss and I don't want to give you too much bad news because he's watching, just think about the position they're in. It's extraordinarily difficult, but it's incredibly important that we get this one right.
Dr. Robert Wachter, Chair of the Department of Medicine at UCSF. Sir, thank you for being here. Thanks for sticking with me.
because it's a product that works.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Did you know you can go to libertymutual.com?
Voters, there were a lot more third-party voters at that particular point than going on right now. So Trump doesn't just need to win the undecideds because Joe Biden's at or above 50%, as our poll indicates. He has to take voters away from Joe Biden in order to do so. Very different than 4 years ago. Last thing I'll note is Biden has been winning not just the last 150 days. He has been leading the last 3 years. He's just had a continuous lead that's very much unlike what we saw in 2016.
All right, Philip, you take an interesting look at this demographic. Other than pissing off older people by constantly painting Joe's age as a function of him being like one step from the grave and the other one on a banana peel, the president constantly through his campaign, radical left, Biden's going to be co-opted, horrible things, culture war, everything's going to go the wrong way. Why would 65 and older be resonating with Biden better than Trump?
It's a great question, and honestly, I'm not sure we really know the answer to that. I will say, though, that one of the features we've seen is something that Harry just got to. Both sides are really, really locked in, that there aren't a lot of swing voters moving back and forth. It'll be fascinating to figure out how big that swing group population is. But the key demo that I really like to look at here is the voters who dislike both candidates, speaking to that point. Voters who dislike both candidates in 2016 went for Trump by 17 points. Now, consistently, they're backing Biden by 20-plus points, which shows Trump is also not getting the benefit of the doubt from people the way he did 4 years ago, and that's definitely hurting him.
Well, he is the president, so he has a record attached to him, even though he seems to be making it more Biden's fault than his own. I don't know how well that works. Harry, looking at the electoral map, even if this number stinks and it's really a tight race, overall, you say the electoral map still tells a story that is good for Biden at this point.
Yeah, I mean, look, Joe Biden is ahead in more than enough states to get 270 electoral votes. And, you point out the polls were wrong last time around. But even if Trump outperforms the polls as much as he did in 2016, given the polls right now, Joe Biden would still be well over 270 electoral votes. So even if the polls are off, Biden is still very much clearly ahead.
I don't trust it, Bump. It just doesn't feel like that in the country. Again, every time the president goes out, he packs the house, even though he's making people sick. The flags are all over the place again, the intensity online. I don't know. What am I missing?
Well, President Trump has done a very good job of building this sense that he has this energetic base behind him. I mean, how many times have we heard him talk about voters over the course of the year? It's a totally meaningless statistic, but it's something he talks about all the time. The real test is if you look at what we're starting to see, people lining up for early voting, they're lining up in big cities, that people are eager to go out and vote. That's the sort of thing that we'll watch over time, and so far seems to be indicating this can be a big turnout election, and it may actually reinforce some of the poll numbers we've been seeing.
Got to watch. You don't have to be a pro to know that the last few weeks will matter the most, and we'll be watching. Harry Ant and Philip Bump, great to see you both looking well. God bless. So all for us, best part of the night. CNN tonight with the man D. Lemon right now.
It's different. There are a couple things that are different that people aren't taking into account. Joe Biden is not Hillary Clinton. People, this isn't me. I'm not saying that I don't like Hillary Clinton, but she did not have high favorability ratings. Joe Biden's favorability ratings are higher. As you so rightly pointed out, now this president is not just aspirational. He has a record, right, that he's run on, and that he, and most of the time, continues to run into the ground. And I think that people talk about the silent majority. You said, you don't see the lawn signs or whatever. I think that people feel that they don't have to put up lawn signs and do all those things because the lawn sign is Trump out every day giving misinformation. And when after someone annoys you for a while, you have your detractors, Chris, many of them on state television like I do. What's the best way to handle it? You just ignore it.
Naked choke?
No, just ignore
Punch the sternum?
That people, when you ignore people, that is the worst thing that you can do to anyone. So I think that people are sick of, quite frankly, sick of us talking about Trump every single night, leading with him. It's the bulk of our show. People are tired of it. And they're tired of his antics. And I think there's a silent majority who are just going to say, you know what? I'm done, and they're not yelling and screaming, they're not ripping their masks off, they're not yelling at people to wear masks It's quite frankly, most of them aren't the young people who are out there on the streets, although they're upset and they will have some influence in this election. These are the steady voters, as I say, the church hat ladies who are going to vote, and they are quite frankly tired of it because they think about their kids being bullied and they don't like bullies.
Well, I don't know about the church hat part, but we know that white women have been moving more towards Biden. We know that people who don't like either candidate are breaking more towards Biden, certainly to your point, than they did with Clinton. I don't see people's read on the moment the same way as you do because we're in so much crisis that I think that kind of overwhelms the Trumpiness of it, and they just need to know because this guy's at the head. But I understand what you're saying. I think the silent majority has turned into the concern of whether or not the majority gets silenced through all these suppression efforts with the ballots.
You got that right. Listen, and I'm not saying Joe Biden's going to win or Donald Trump's going to win. Before people get it misconstrued, everyone says Don Lemon says Donald Trump is going to lose. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that this isn't 2016, and people love to view this election this time through a 2016 lens. It's not that. This is 2020. Things are a lot different. We're in the middle of a pandemic. People have lost a lot of loved ones. The president is, quite frankly, great at stagecraft, but is he great at policy? Is he great at carrying, doing the business of the American people, carrying out an agenda? That's what people are going to decide on. They're not going to decide on, whether it's, this is 2016 and blah, 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 and whatever, October surprise, whatever's going to happen before the election. I think most people's minds are made up at this moment. It's baked in the cake.
Maybe good at stagecraft, but he's going to have to work on his witchcraft because he's got people dropping all over the place around him in that White House. The White House is a cluster.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. The best way, you make a really strong point about how when somebody doesn't like something, sometimes they're just quiet to it.
Yeah.
And I would argue that that is the second best way to handle it. First way, Pak Sal, 1, 2, 3. Good night.
You are right about a cluster. It's a cluster in many different ways.
All right, I was going to say, keep us hired, son. I got school to pay.
Thank you. I'll see you soon.
I love you, D. Lemon.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You more, my brother. This is CNN Tonight, and I am Don Lemon. So, obviously it's breaking news. It's breaking news every night because there's always something when it comes to this administration. So again, as I say, I'm going to give you the facts. I'm going to give it to you straight. And I think it's for all of us, considering all the chaos in the country, just how unsettled people are, all the anxiety. So let's just remain calm. As they say, keep calm and carry on. But I'm still going to give you the facts right now. And I'm still going to talk about the failure of this White House to protect you, to protect the country from the coronavirus, a deadly, contagious virus playing out for all of us to see right now. It is right there. See that house? Right inside the halls of the White House where the president sits tonight, infected, lashing out, exposed, making himself feel better by recording videos and tweeting. If you're sick, man, just chill out. Just do the thing, right? You don't have to do all the antics or whatever because you're afraid. Just maybe it will help if you just got off the stage for a moment. Tonight we have learned that Stephen Miller is the president's senior advisor and a speechwriter. Stephen Miller has tested positive for COVID-19. So where does that bring us in the tally? Think about this. Think about if you went to a business and they told you, anywhere, and they told you, hey, 17 people here have been positive. Would you go inside that business or inside that house? Because at least 17 people directly connected to the Trump White House currently have the virus. And I'm not even counting all the cases that could be associated with this. Just Trump staff and closely connected politicians. That's it. And then it could just fan out. Imagine how many people those 17 people have been in contact with. And so on and so on and so on. It's like, and they told two people, remember that commercial? And they told two people, and so on and so on and so on. Stephen Miller said this, pay close attention, about this virus. This was back in July. A comment that has not aged well.
What we were doing, first of all, was mounting the largest national mobilization to fight the China virus that any country has had since World War II.
China virus. He likes to say that, well, How well did that mobilization that he claims work? Because now the Trump White House virus, that's what it is. It is the Trump White House virus. At least 17 people directly connected to this White House have tested positive in the past few days. According to the Washington Post, that is more cases in the last 7 days than 19 countries, including Monaco, Taiwan, Vietnam, and Cambodia. More cases. And that's without even counting the journalists who have been infected. Yet this White House still won't say when the president last tested negative for the virus. The super spreader in chief, stuck in a near empty White House tonight, a victim of his own negligence. So take a look at this picture, okay, everyone? I'm going to wait. I want you to take a look at this picture. Look at it. Look what they're doing. They are disinfecting the White House press room, in a hazmat suit. That's what they do at the president's house. But what about you? But to you, what is anybody disinfecting your house with that professionally? Because he spews dangerous lies and he tells you not to be afraid, but they are disinfecting professionally the White House. But you're not supposed to be afraid. Huh.
Poisoning our kids' minds against their own country. But that's exactly what he did today. Look past Biden's canned speech and the gauzy rhetoric and focus in on some simple truths tonight. If you want to see China grow more powerful, if you want to see your wages go down and taxes go up, if you want to see a hateful, distorted history pushed on our kids, and if you want to see our cities and towns all across America locked down and our borders flung open, then Joe's your guy. But our movement, it was created to check China's brazen trade cheating and attempts at world dominance. Trump did that. Our movement was about bringing our troops home and finding peace wherever possible, raising wages on the working man. Trump did all that. 4 weeks from now, your decision is going to be really simple. If you want to make tech billionaires and radical anarchists and CNN all really happy, vote for Biden. But if you care about your own standard of living, preserving this country for your kids, having your freedoms, your basic freedoms respected, vote Trump. And that's the angle. And as I mentioned, Biden's national plan amounts to nothing more than rolling shutdowns that are going to destroy our own country. For more on that, we're joined by White House COVID advisor, Dr. Scott Atlas, who was just dubbed the anti-lockdown coronavirus advisor by the esteemed journal Business Insider. Dr. Atlas, you've just risen in my estimation, if that's even possible, but that nickname. You said that the president's diagnosis will not change how the White House tackles the pandemic. Why is that?
Thanks for having me, Laura. Well, of course it won't change. I mean, obviously, the strategy is the same, and the president articulated this presciently, really, in the third week of March when he said that the cure cannot be worse than the problem. And so the strategy is highly aggressive, targeted protection of the vulnerable and opening up schools and society, because he early on recognized that the policy that many of the public health officials espouse and many of our governors espouse, which is stopping COVID-19 at all costs, is very destructive, because as we've learned all over the world, the prolonged lockdown is super harmful. I mean, we just had a study come out yesterday which showed that 46% of the top 6 cancers went undiagnosed during the first 3 months of this lockdown. And what that means is more than half of breast cancers, by the way. This is just the tip of the iceberg. It's not just that hospitals were closed, it's that there was fear instilled, sort of a frenzy of fear in the American public and all over the world. And so what we see are 650,000 people that were on chemotherapy, half didn't get their chemo. We had 2/3 of cancer screenings not get done. Half of childhood immunizations weren't getting done. And the other impacts are even more harmful. 25% of kids in the United States 18 to 24, 1/4 had suicidal ideation during the month of June. I mean, this is so destructive, not just to our children who are being harmed by the school closures, but really this lockdown is what I would call a luxury of the rich. This is really a class problem here where the affluent elites don't understand that what the president understands, which is people need to work, the working class needs their jobs, children need to go to school, and it's very harmful to do otherwise.
Yeah, the poor have disproportionately been affected by lockdowns, and they're doing better, the working class people in the states that have reopened, where almost all of those are Republican-led states because they believe in freedom and not fear. By the way, Dr. Atlas, I have to talk about part of what Joe Biden said today in his Gettysburg address about how he would tackle COVID. Watch.
Let's just set partisanship aside. Let's end the politics and follow the science. Wearing a mask is not a political statement. It's a scientific recommendation. We're going to have a national strategy that will make it possible for our schools and businesses to open safely.
Dr. Atlas, when he says national strategy, what does he really mean there?
Well, I cannot speak for Mr. Biden, but I can say this, that there is a complete fallacy that President Trump is not following the science. President Trump follows the science. He listens to people both inside government, public health officials, and he also gets information from the actual academic scientists, medical scientists, epidemiologists from places like Harvard and Stanford and Oxford, top people in the world. And these people actually agree very much with his strategy. Protect the vulnerable as much as you can and open up because of the harms of that. This is a national strategy. The president articulated, he says it all the time, and in the meantime, he's doing a lot of great things like he showed actually as a patient recently, like Operation Warp Speed with new drug development, facilitating the record timing of a safe and effective vaccine that we anticipate very soon. And, you know,
but Dr.
the hospitalizations have gone way down.
Hospitalizations are way down, deaths are way down. That's all good news, and the media just refuse to report it. They just will not report it because we're going to kill the country off to make sure we have not a single person infected with the virus in the United States. That's their plan. Biden's plan are rolling lockdowns because his advisors have already said that's what we should have done initially, is to keep it going. But I have to ask you about this because when we see the president come on the balcony and he takes his mask off to do that, video, which was, a lot of people love the video. He just got reamed by all the COVID panic squad in the media saying he's a walking vector of disease and a cloud of contagion in the White House and people are dropping like flies. What is your response on the specific issue of the symbol of the mask and the president taking it off?
Well, listen, the president, he respects the disease, and I don't think anyone should think he's minimizing the seriousness of this disease. It's highly dangerous for people in the category of high risk, elderly, and people with comorbidities. But he's we're all thrilled actually how well he's doing. I saw him actually earlier this evening. It's amazing. The guy is incredibly resilient, and that's fantastic. But that does not minimize his concern, and he's following all of the recommended guidelines for someone who's sick. When he's around people, people enter his area, he has a mask, everyone else has a mask on. I mean, it's very clear, this is very dangerous for people. When you're symptomatic, there are certain guidelines to follow, and his policy is really the reasonable policy. It's the policy of the NIH, I just looked it up, which is wear a mask when you cannot socially distance. There's no sort of cavalier attitude whatsoever, but he did very well. He's doing very well, and he came home. He took his mask off. He was outside. Yeah, I think the media is making something out of nothing here, really.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Fauci responded to the president comparing COVID to the flu earlier in a tweet. Watch.
The numbers speak for themselves. This is not a trivial disease. You don't get a pandemic that kills 1 million people, and it isn't even over yet with influenza.
And big tech, Dr. Atlas, is once again trying to silence the president. NPR reporting that Facebook, Twitter take action against Trump falsely claims that the flu is deadlier than COVID-19. But check this out. We did this research ourselves tonight. For those 24 and under, it's actually less deadly. The flu is less, the COVID is less deadly than the flu. Look at the numbers. 434 for those ages 0 to 18, that's the flu, and 429 COVID deaths going all the way up to 24. So he was right in that key age group that is trying to go to school and college and so forth. So we are keeping kids out of school for a disease that is less deadly than the flu. That is correct according to the CDC numbers, correct?
Well, I mean, it's not just correct according to the CDC. There's no question that the president was talking about in some populations, and he's talking about the younger people, children. The COVID-19 is less dangerous than seasonal flu. That's on the basis of deaths. It's on the basis of hospitalizations. It's been stated exactly that by journal JAMA Pediatrics. This is not really, arguable. Right. And they're trying to, again, make something that he really didn't mean. What he's saying is that in certain populations, it's less dangerous than the flu.
Well, that's a big population.
Kids, and that's just scientifically factual.
So I just want everyone to understand this tonight. We got to roll, Dr. Alice. Thank you so much. But I want people to understand this. Twitter and Facebook are censoring the President of the United States under false pretenses. The facts are against them. The flu for that population, the younger people, is more deadly than COVID. Period. Those are the stats. And they're censoring the president over that. Unbelievable. That's the country we live in. And no wonder they're giving all the money to the Obama campaign. All right, Michelle Obama delivered a closing message today filled with a racial invective. I rebut her comments, and then Dinesh D'Souza, Cynthia Garrett offer can't-miss reactions. Stay there.
The result of this behavior, and he's about to pay, I think, a severe political price for it at the polls when we get there about a month from now, I guess, from today.
Olivia Troy, before you go, what question would you like to see asked tomorrow night at the vice presidential debate where your former boss, Mike Pence, will be appearing?
I think I would ask him what response does he have for the families, such as Kristen, who spoke about how it made her feel when the president went out on the balcony, took off his mask, and messaged something completely undermining of what the task force has done and the work that they've done and what the vice president has done. And how does he explain that? I would love an explanation of how do you explain all of the work that we have done for the past, since January, all of these months on this pandemic to keep Americans safe. How do you explain the behavior of the president, and how do you stand by it?
Olivia Troy, John Heilemann, thank you both very much for starting off our discussion tonight.
Thanks, Lawrence.
And when we come back, we saw the breaking news on Rachel in the last hour. Michael Hayden, former head of the CIA in the Bush administration, announced his endorsement of Joe Biden for president. Another former head of the CIA, John Brennan, joins us next.
Urgent medical care, emergency shelter, food, and the love and care they need to survive.